There really is room, in my opinion, to have cash in a retirement portfolio because it's being called on. Its job is showing up and giving you the money that you need for that year or that month.
Well, welcome to the Steadyhand Coffee Break series, a shorter, snappier version of our longer form cafes, all of which are available on our YouTube channel. Now, today we'll be addressing the nastiest, hardest problem in finance. That is, how do you get a reliable, steady income from your portfolio in retirement? And indeed, the London Financial Times reported last March that, quote, in the new era of defined contribution pensions, as opposed to the old era of defined benefit pensions, individuals retire with a pot of pension savings and then have to deal with tough questions about how long they might live, what care they might need in older age, what inflation might be 20 years from now, and even more. And in short, everybody has to become, in effect, an actuary. And worryingly, most people are tackling these thorny questions with no advice or guidance at all. According to research, only a fifth of those aged 50 to 64 have spoken to a financial advisor about their pensions. And only 14 of people accessing a defined contribution pension for the first time seek guidance from the government's PensionWise service, a UK service, which offers free appointments to the over 50-year-olds. The article went on to say, quote, this creates major risks. The biggest is that people could underestimate how long they might live. They might spend too much in early retirement and then run out of money at just the moment when they need to pay for long-term care later in life. Indeed, Bill Sharp, a Nobel laureate-winning economist, claims that the challenge of getting reliable income from an investment portfolio or decumulating your RSP or RIF in other financial assets is the nastiest, hardest problem in finance. So what's an investor to do? Well, to help us dig into this challenge, I'm joined today by two experts in helping Canadians plan for and live in retirement. Canadian money coach and advice-only financial planner Janet Gray, and our very own Evan Parubets, head of client advisory services for Steadyhand. Welcome from Ottawa, Janet, and from Toronto, Evan. It's great to see you both.
Thank you.
Now, Janet, let's kick off this discussion with a quick introduction of the work that you do at Money Coaches, the nature of your planning practice, and the age and stage of Canadians that you generally work with.
Most of the people that I work with tend to be pre-retirees or sometimes even into their retirement, but they really want some certainty around how things might unfold in this next chapter of their lives, which could potentially be, 25, 30, 35 years for many people. They want to have some clarity on what their options are. They want some confirmation of maybe some of the strategies they thought might work for them, but they're not quite totally sure. They want some numbers, some scenarios possibly, and some calculations done to kind of prove the point. And they want some hand holding. They don't want to maybe do it on their own. They know that, other people have possibly not done well with their own planning. So they want to have someone with expertise to kind of guide them, coach them, encourage them, reassure them that they are heading in the right direction for, a good chunk of their life, but also a very important income-wise chunk of their life.
I can only imagine the complexity and the changes that are involved, not only to one's life and lifestyle, but also to all of the issues related to taxes and investing and insurance. And it's just mind-blowingly complex and creating all sorts of uncertainties. So I know the work that you guys do for Canadians is enormously important. And we certainly have worked with a lot of clients at Steadyhand that are also working with money coaches and other advice-only planners. And Evan, why don't you tell us a little bit about how the work that you and the Steadyhand team serving our clients integrates into the planning work that Janet and her advice-only planner community does?
Thank you, David. We often work with the client and the advice-only planner in implementing some of the actionable items that come from the financial plan, especially as it relates to the investments. As an example, for those who have entered retirement, they often need to start withdrawing from any of their various investment portfolios, for example, an RSP or a RIF, and we would help implement the withdrawal process for them to make sure the money gets into their bank account. We'd also discuss changing the investment portfolio to take into account the fact that they need to withdraw money and safeguard their assets, having more in the savings fund or any other portfolio that will not be as volatile while they're withdrawing money.
I think it's fair to say that it's a very complementary experience that clients have between working with an investment firm like Steadyhand and working with an advice-only financial planner. And I know we're going to tease out some more of that as we go forward. Now, Janet, your clients are moving from an accumulation stage where they're piling money into their RSP and TFSAs and such into a decumulation stage where they're starting to take money from their RSPs or converting to a RIF and such. What do you see as the main challenges for Canadians as they enter that decumulation stage of life?
It's a real switch. It's almost like an off and on switch. They've been great at accumulating, many people, right? They've got, they've gathered they've worked hard, they've saved hard, they've, been very frugal sometimes, and now they've got this pot of money, but it's really hard to let it go sometimes. And also to know what amount to decumulate, like to what, what amount should they take out to support their lifestyle? What are the other sources of income that they have? What are their spending needs? And it's a real confusing time. There's a lot of balls in the air. So it's very much let's talk it through. Let's make sure you have some goals. What are your goals and what money is required for those goals? And then what are the resources? So we try and match the two together and give them some comfort really in knowing that here are the goals that you're likely to reach. Here are some that you could reach with, if you reduce maybe some of your spending. So it's really an all round type of package. But in the end, they want to know, will I have enough? Will I be okay? Is kind of the bottom line for almost everybody that comes to us.
That's true. And I would imagine that a lot of people are looking to, quote unquote, minimize taxes as they withdraw income from their portfolios. Is that true? Does that sort of play a big role in the work that you do? I
think so. That's the biggest bug for people is kind of like, don't want to have to pay more taxes than we can. But also there's the strategy of, paying your taxes over a long period of time rather than paying your taxes in a big chunk, a lot. Then you kind of spread out that income, that taxable income over a longer period of time. So you are in the end paying less taxes per year and certainly over time. So it's really to try and, get all their goals, but also to minimize, that bug that really they hate about the taxes. And we see that in our practice as well. For example, people retiring before the traditional, age and starting to take money out of their RSP prior to taking CPP and OAS benefits and all the rest of it. The RSP meltdown strategy is, in many respects, it's a lifestyle requirement strategy, but it's also a tax mitigation strategy as well. Now, Evan, in addition to Janet's list of challenges based upon the work that you and your team do with Steadyhand clients, what other challenges would you add to that list?
Yes, certainly the risks Janet provided. We hear all the time: longevity risk, inflation, etc. Taxes, of course. I should add. Sometimes we talk about longevity and the fear of running out before retirement. We also see the opposite, where there's such a palpable fear of running out of money before you pass away that people tend not to spend as much as they could have and enjoy retirement as much. So it's a reversal of that logic. And sometimes I find when clients do financial plans, they are relieved to find out that they actually can afford more than they initially thought. In terms of the investments, a big part of planning is a sequence of return risk. And the idea is that when you're working, as long as you stay disciplined, you're investing every year, contributing into the portfolio, even if there's dips in the market or outright crashes, if you stick to your plan and you don't panic sell and whatnot, you should come across better off over time. You don't have that flexibility necessarily in retirement without proper safeguards, because if a portfolio goes down early on in retirement, you may not be able to catch up from those losses unless you've set up the portfolio accordingly.
And hence our sort of branding value proposition at Steadyhand being markets rise and fall, but steady rules them all. That's the whole point to why we've used that sort of tagline. You have to remain, as they say, you have to remain invested, because it's not timing the markets, it's time in the markets that'll generate the the pot of money that you can then look to retire on. And we'll get into what sequence of returns means in decumulation shortly. And Janet, I think you'll probably address it to some degree as well. But how do you advise, Janet? How do you advise your clients to to address these challenges when they flip from accumulating to decumulating? What are some of the strategies that you'd recommend? And what are some of the common mistakes that you might see with clients' withdrawal strategies?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are not aware. I mean, we all know that financial literacy is not something that Canadians can really brag about. We are not experts in it. We don't learn it in school. We don't often learn it from our parents and family members. So it really is kind of a big step for people to concentrate and focus on getting some awareness around their situation. Often there's denial. They just feel that, the state will look after them. Between their CPP, possibly an OAS, they'll be fine. And I think they're sometimes surprised that, yes, for many people, it is a nice chunk of retirement income, but not for everybody. And they misunderstand the state programs, again, CPP and OAS. That's certainly a challenge. It's a great benefit for people to have, but they need to understand the limits of it, really. And then, and sometimes they understand that a little too late. So it really should be something that's, first of all, taught in school, or at least taught through, maybe employers, to kind of understand and explain that this is really what's the, the base income for many retirees. And I think that's really just, face the music. It's, denial is not a good plan. Look at what the numbers are, have someone with professional expertise discuss it with you to give that overview, that oversight, so that you can have a better confidence in what your retired life would look like. Back to Evan's comment about people sometimes are too frugal in retirement. And if they had some, confidence in their numbers, they knew that they could maybe take that extra trip or gift that extra money or live a higher lifestyle than what they've been doing.
One of the big numbers that's bandied around in this area of decumulation is the 4% rule, which celebrates its 30th anniversary this year. 1994, it came out as a guideline for what you can reasonably expect to withdraw from your portfolio without diminishing the value of your portfolio. And I guess what we'll do is we'll link to some of the documentation that supports that original 4% rule, so people can have the historical perspective. But Janet, in terms of your practice, do you lean into that rule at all, or is it irrelevant?
Yes and no. I mean, we try and establish, I've heard it called a floor and a ceiling. So we kind of say, okay, what is your goal spending? First of all, what is the minimum that you will need for the lifestyle you would like or you need to have? And then what is the ceiling of what you could potentially spend to with depleting your assets at the time of longevity? We're often projecting out to age 95. Sometimes 98. I did a projection the other day for 105 because the lady's already 90. So there's different, but we normally by rule go to 95 or 98. So we project out and see how much they can deplete all of their assets and maybe only leave their home, their real estate, or maybe they're going to sell their home. So we're looking at, here's the basic, here's the ceiling, and you can spend between there with some confidence. Look at the numbers as you go along and adjust them, because maybe you had an unpredictable expense, or maybe your health care is costing later in the later years. So make sure you make the adjustments. I don't think anybody would claim that they could make a plan in 2024 and have it last for 30 years. That's ridiculous. But I think if you adjust it along the way with certain factors and why you're adjusting it, then I think it's floor ceiling. It gives them a lot of room. One year they spend more, one year they spend less. But if they're in that ballpark, I think they'll have greater confidence.
And that idea of establishing some variability or flexibility in your annual spending is part of the solution to this next question that I'm going to ask Evan to address, which is the sequence of returns risk, and what are some of the ways that you can work your way through that risk. So Evan, over to you to talk a little bit about sequence of returns risk.
Just imagine a stock market index, let's say the S&P 500, and imagine you had invested in year 2000, $100,000 and never contributed again, never withdrew. You would have gone through a lot of cycles right off the bat. You would have had the dot-com crash and half your money's gone in 3 years, but you're not touching it. You're not retired. You let it recover. It's gone up. 2008 happened. It goes back down and up and down. By the time the 20 odd years is up, you have several $100,000. You've done quite well for yourself because you've been disciplined. You're not touching the money. Now, what if we did everything in reverse? What if your first year of investment was 2023 and then 2022 and 2021 and eventually 2000? If you never touched your investment portfolio, the return, regardless of which way, forward or backwards, would have been the same. You would have had the same amount after all those years. So we're just simply reversing the sequence of return by forward or backwards. Why I mention this as an example is it doesn't work this way when you've retired. And the reason being is because when you've retired, more often than not, you're now withdrawing from your investment portfolio. So using those same 20 odd years, and by the way, I'd never recommend anyone investing in all stocks, never mind one index. It's more for illustration. But when you are investing and withdrawing at the same time, if you have a major drop, or even a not so major drop in the value of the market, and you're withdrawing from your portfolio at the same time, your portfolio size have shrank and you've taken money out, and you continue to take money out while it's trying to recover. And that essentially diminishes the value of your portfolio permanently. We hear all the time when investing, stick to the long term, and that's absolutely true. But in retirement, you've got to do things differently to take into account that we don't know what's going to happen in the next few years to your portfolio, because we don't know what's going to happen to the markets. And back to that same example, if we reverse the order, if you started in 2023, you've had several good years before the bad years, you actually would have had the money last a lot longer. And as this graph illustrates, different numbers, but by having a market downturn right from the beginning of 15%, you could see that the value of the portfolio diminishes a lot quicker than if that loss didn't happen at the beginning. So sequence of return risk is the timing, or good or bad timing, that applies when you start to retire. And there are, of course, a lot of tools you can do to mitigate or eliminate that risk.
So sequence of returns is an opportunity potentially when you're an accumulator, because when the market goes down, that's actually a good thing, and you should be rubbing your hands in glee. But when you flip into decumulation, sequence of returns is really a risk, because if you need the money from your portfolio when it's gone down, you're not going to allow that withdrawal to then recover with the market, which ordinarily happens and should happen in the future. And as a result, that is a permanent sort of loss or withdrawal from your capital. So yeah, it's a big, big issue. Janet, as you think about this and the work that you do with your clients, how do you address that risk?
I think part of it goes to what we were saying earlier, is that you need to make adjustments along the way. And you need to say, okay, last year my investments didn't do so well. Do I really need to take out that money for my trip? Do I really need to take out the money for that home renovation? Are there things that we can pull back on and not have to rely as much on our investments? Now, of course, there are the RIF requirements. So you do have to take out certain amounts at a certain age. So that may change things, but if you have to make extraordinary withdrawals, like withdrawals that you have control over, maybe you pull back a little bit and say, oh, maybe we'll do it next year. Maybe we'll take another look at it, or fund it a different way instead of taking it from the market. So it also leads to, we talk about having a diversified portfolio. And we talk to our clients, or I talk to my clients about giving your money a job. So, if you have short-term needs for your money, then the job of your money is to be short-term also. It needs to be liquid, readily accessible, non-volatile, very safe and secure. And that tends to lead you towards cash, GICs, fixed income products. If you have a longer future job for your money, then it should be in, a little more increasing products, like equity products at that end. So you have both, but they have specific jobs. So maybe in a year where the income is, or the markets are a little tougher, maybe that's when you use the cash that you have on hand, wait for the markets to recover, and then go back in and adjust your equities, pull some cash through the equities to build up your cash again. So there really is room, in my opinion, to have cash in a retirement portfolio because it's being called on. Its job is showing up and giving you the money that you need for that year or that month.
Janet, that was not rehearsed, but that's a perfect segue into what I'm going to ask Evan to speak a little bit about, which is the work that we've done into researching how our clients can better tune their portfolios in order to deal with the sequence of return risk and to get reliable, steady income from their portfolios. And we've looked at all the various products in the marketplace and decided that, in fact, a service or a solution was a better way to help our clients. And so, Evan, can you explain how we came to what we call now the Steadyhand Retirement Withdrawal Program? What is it and who is it designed for?
Yes, certainly. Before that, I'm going to steal that phrase from you. Money has a job. I love it, Janet. Excellent way to say it. So I will start with by defining what the Steadyhand Withdrawal Program is not. Any expenses, the money has a job that is meant for short-term lump sum expenses like, I don't know, let's say a vacation, a home renovation. That should just simply be parked in savings, GICs, cash, that type of idea, and kept aside until that expense comes. The Steadyhand Withdrawal Program is intended for monthly cash flow. Basically, you taking money out of your portfolio on a monthly basis to provide for your regular cash flow needs, not for lump sum expenses. And the intention is to avoid sequence of return risk. As David already said, we did a lot of research on various products out there. There are retirement products out there, but everyone has their advantages and disadvantages. They're often expensive, and really it's more of the process than it is a product. And so the first step is putting money aside that's not exposed to the market. If you need cash flow, you should not have the entire amount of your portfolio invested. We recommend generally 2 years, possibly 3 years of your cash flow. So somebody needs, let's say $3,000 a month from their portfolio. That's $36,000 a year. For 2 years, that'd be $72,000. That should be set aside in savings. Thankfully, rates have gone up. So currently, our Steadyhand Savings Fund is north of 4.5%, for example, after all fees. And so you get a decent return while this money is being kept safe. That's the first part of it, creating the savings fund. The issue that can come is you create it, you feel happy, you're withdrawing from it. Months go by, quarters go by, and the amount in savings is getting to be depleted. If you're not being proactive on it, eventually it will deplete. And what if when it's depleted or near depletion, the markets are in a bind and they're down? Now you have a tough choice to make. Do you wait a few more months till it's completely depleted and hope the markets recover? And if they don't, now you're forced to sell the investments at a loss. The whole point of the savings reserve was to avoid that. So it's not just about creating the savings reserve. It's also about replenishing it. And because we can't forecast the markets, we don't have the crystal ball, is forecast, instead of forecasting, we top up on a very frequent basis. So not once a year as part of a review, not at 2 years when it's completely depleted. With the Steadyhand Withdrawal Program, once you enroll in it, we will send you out an email. And based on the market conditions in the last quarter, we would recommend to you whether it's time to top up, especially if the markets have gone up, or if it's not a good time. Say there's a major market downturn in the last several months. Using the example I used earlier, if you were taking $3,000 a month, you started off with $72,000 in savings. 3 months have gone by till your next email. You've now withdrawn $9,000. We would likely provide you a recommendation to simply move $9,000 out of your investment portfolio side and into your savings sides, and you're back to $72,000. And that it will actually ironically get boring after a while. We'll ask you to do this quarter after quarter. And the idea is to keep it as close as 2 years as possible, because when the time comes when the markets are going to go down, we'll be very thankful that we have that to take us through the downturn, and especially if it's a significant downturn.
So, Evan, it sounds like clients are able to really lean in on Steadyhand's advice and counsel around when they should be topping up their spending reserve or the savings fund component of their overall withdrawal program. And I would imagine that's being well received. But how have clients been receiving the new service?
Our clients have told us that it gives them peace of mind knowing that there's money set aside during bad times and they don't have to worry about it. They love the fact that we're providing the guidance for them. In addition to that, many advice-only planners who have clients who have enrolled in this have said positive things about this program, and for the same reasons. This really does dive into behavioral investing, which is the idea of often investors make mistakes because of fears of what's going to happen. And by having money set aside, the likelihood of them selling off in a market downturn is mitigated. We actually have a long document called Hardest Decision Investing. It's a great read about the perils of market timing, and I would encourage you to read it. But nevertheless, the savings withdrawal program does mitigate chances of people making errors in the markets.
That's a really good point. That Hardest Decision Investing is a research paper that we wrote on trying to help people understand the easiest thing is to bail in a declining market. The hardest thing is to know when to get back in. And as a result, and we were motivated to write this because we saw investors bail out in 2008 in the great financial crisis, and they could never get back in. And they missed the big rebound in 2009, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll link to that document in the video notes below, and we'll also link to the area where you can find out what our advice is to retirees around whether they should top up or not, because we update that in our current outlook, which we do on our website once a month. Well, Janet, you get the last word on all this. So what haven't we covered that you think Canadians should hear about as they consider retirement income and just basically decumulation in general?
I think the main rule is, again, to increase your awareness of where you currently are, where you might get to. So find out your CPP numbers, find out what your OAS qualifying, amounts might look like. Talk to your employer and ask, how does this group pension work, or how does this group RSP work? Start to gather your information well in advance, because I have people that say, when I'm working with them, I wish I'd done this 20 years ago. I wouldn't be feeling that sense of impending doom or gloom and worry. So it really is, start early and ask a lot of questions, look for, professional advice and ask around, get references on that as well. But, do your work, because we say to clients, no one cares more about your money than you do. So do your part and bring people to the picture and, let them help you do this. But very few people are able, unfortunately, to do it on their own. Finances are so complex, and it's a big decision. Sometimes you can step back and take another look at it and redo a few things, but sometimes those decisions are pretty binding, and you want to gather some strength and some confidence and work with professionals.
Well, those are wise words, Janet. And at Steadyhand, we have a complimentary term. We say you are the CEO of your portfolio. And we think, well, it's fine and it's totally appropriate to delegate. We encourage people never to abdicate. So I share your perspective on getting advice early and from independent and objective professionals. Well, Janet and Evan, thank you both for sharing your expertise and guidance on indeed the nastiest, hardest problem in finance. And for anyone who would like more information on the Steadyhand Retirement Withdrawal Program, we've included a link in the video notes below. We've also included a link to the Money Coaches Canada website, as well as the Advice-Only Planner directory that Steadyhand hosts on our website. Many of the planners listed provide a complimentary 20 to 30-minute phone call to see if your needs are a good fit for their planning practice. And I encourage you to consider the importance of that independent and objective financial planning perspective to help you plan for the nastiest, hardest problem in finance. And if you like what you've heard today, be sure to check out our YouTube channel, as we have and will continue to post videos of content of interest to you. Subscribing to our channel will help notify you when we load new content. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.